Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm Dr. Sara Khan, and this is the continuation of our previous lecture. In the previous lecture, we were studying about the classification of skeletal muscles. So it is the continuation of the classification of skeletal muscles, and we will start from the classification of skeletal muscles based on physiological action. So the first one are agonists, which are also known as prime movers; antagonists, which have the action which is opposite to the agonist; fixator, these fixate or stabilize the joints; and synergists, which assist in guiding. So first of all, what are prime movers or agonists? The muscle or a group of muscle which contract to perform a certain action. Muscles which make the major contribution in any contraction. For example, iliopsoas in hip flexion movement. So the prime movers are basically the muscles which initiate and maintains a primary movement. For example, when we want to relax the forearm at the elbow joint, the prime mover is biceps brachii. And when we want to extend the forearm at elbow joint, the prime mover is triceps brachii. So the muscle which is primarily involved in a movement, primarily contracting muscle, is the prime mover or agonist. What is antagonist? A muscle with the opposite action of the prime mover is called an antagonist. They oppose the prime movers as they relax and lengthens progressively to allow agonists to move. So what it means? It means, as I have told you, that in the flexion of the elbow joint, the prime mover is biceps brachii, which helps in the flexion at the elbow joint. At the same time, the triceps brachii relaxes. So the triceps brachii in the flexion of the elbow joint acts as antagonist. So what is the function of antagonist? They maintain body or limb position, such as holding the arm out or standing erect. They control rapid movement and make it smooth and jerk free, as in shadow boxing, without landing a punch or the ability to check the motion of a limb. Here you can see in this diagram, this is the biceps brachii, which is mainly causing the flexion at the elbow joint. So the biceps brachii here acts as a prime mover or agonist, and the triceps brachii relaxes and it acts as antagonist. So this is the case of the flexion. When we see the extension at the elbow joint, we see that the triceps brachii is mainly causing the extension. So here it is a prime mover or agonist, and in the same time during extension the biceps brachii relaxes. So the biceps brachii here acts as an antagonist. So this is another example from the lower limb. For example, to extend the leg at the knee, a group of 4 muscles called the quadriceps femoris in the anterior compartment of the thigh are activated and would be called as the agonists of the leg extension at the knee joint. A set of antagonists called the hamstrings in the posterior compartment of the thigh are activated to slow or stop the movement. And the reverse is, these terms are reversed for the opposite action, flexion of the leg at the knee. In this case, the hamstrings would be called the agonist and quadriceps femoris would be called the antagonist. So this is the diagrammatical representation of the previous talk. For example, here you can appreciate it is the flexion of the knee joint. You all know that in the lower limb, the anterior compartment of the thigh, the muscles in the anterior compartment of the thigh act as extensors, while the posterior compartment is the flexors. So here, when the flexion of the knee is occurring, the muscles which primarily contract are the hamstrings. Hamstrings contracting and working as agonist. This is opposite to the upper limb. So in the flexion, the hamstrings contract and act as prime movers, while the quadriceps femoris relaxes and they act as antagonists. While in this case, you can see this is extension. In the case of extension at the knee joint, you can see the muscles of the anterior compartment, which are known as the quadriceps femoris, they act as agonist, while the muscles on the posterior compartment, which are known as the biceps femoris and others, they relaxes and act as antagonist. Next are fixator. If prime movers and antagonists contract simultaneously and stabilize the joint, they are called fixators. ओके इसका क्या मतलब है? इसका मतलब है प्राइम मूवर्स एंड एंटेगनिस्ट दोनों कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करेंगे एंड व्हेन दे कॉन्ट्रैक्ट दे स्टेबलाइज अ जॉइंट. ओके, दोनों ने कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करना है साइमल्टेनियसली और इन्होंने एक जॉइंट को स्टेबलाइज कर देना है. दे फिक्स द जॉइंट इन अ पोजिशन टू प्रोवाइड एन इमोबाइल बेस सो दैट अदर प्राइम मूवर्स कैन एक्ट. दे स्टेबलाइज द ओरिजिन ऑफ द एगोनिस्ट मसल so that the agonist can pull against the bone without it moving, thereby achieve an effective contraction. For example, muscles attaching the shoulder girdle to the trunk contract to fix the girdle. शोल्डर गर्डल के मसल्स हैं वो पहले कॉन्ट्रैक्ट करेंगे एंड वो शोल्डर गर्डल को फिक्स कर देंगे. एंड आफ्टर फिक्सेशन deltoid, when they fix the shoulder girdle muscles, then the deltoid contracts and abducts the arm till 90 degree. Okay, the meaning of this whole paragraph is that the muscles which are required for the fixation of the specific joint are called fixator. And why they fixate? They fixate the joint in a position so that the prime movers can act as they can perform their specific functions. Okay, now number 4 are the synergists. They act around a movable joint to produce motion similar to or in concert with agonist muscles. They often act to reduce excessive force generated by the agonist muscles and are referred to as neutralizers. Fixators are called stabilizers and synergists are called neutralizer. Synergists are muscles that work together in close cooperation as they either contract or relax to modify the action of the agonists. Their aims are to make the agonist stronger, to eliminate the action of undesired movements. For example, when a prime mover crosses multiple joints, synergists prevent undesired actions at the intermediate joints. So what is the meaning of this whole paragraph? It means that as you all know that the long flexors of the forearm, they crosses multiple joints. They crosses the wrist joint, the carpal joints, the carpometacarpal joints and metacarpophalangeal joints, and then they attach to phalanges. So you can see in this case the long flexor tendons are crossing so many joints, while their main action is on the interphalangeal joints. They flexes the interphalangeal joints. So what is the function of synergists here? In this case, the synergist prevent the excessive contractions done by the long flexor tendons. For example, here in this diagram, you can see that this is biceps brachii muscle, which is a prime mover which is causing the flexion at the elbow joint. While in the flexion, there are other muscles which are causing the flexion at the same joint. For example, the brachioradialis. Here, the brachioradialis acts as synergist. Okay, Here in this diagram you can see that the biceps brachii is dissected, and this is brachialis and this is brachioradialis. So brachialis is also acts as synergist. Okay, I can simplify this in the flexion of the elbow joint. Okay, this is the flexion of the elbow joint. The brachioradialis and brachialis acts as synergist. Brachioradialis and brachialis acts as synergist, while the biceps brachii, this one and this one, they act as prime movers. It means that the brachioradialis and biceps brachii prevent the unwanted flexion of biceps brachii. Okay, so this is the diagrammatic presentation. Here this is again the thing which I have told you already. These are the long flexor tendons. Here you can see that these tendons are inserted in the interphalangeal joints, while they are also passing through the wrist joint and many other joints. So synergist, what synergist done? They control the unwanted flexion caused by these long flexor tendons at the intermediate joints. So it is again a diagrammatic presentation. The prime movers, agonist and antagonist. I have told you earlier, in the flexion of the elbow joint, the biceps brachii is the prime mover and triceps brachii is the antagonist. In the extension. In the extension, triceps brachii is agonist or prime mover, and the biceps brachii is antagonist. And in this diagram, this is biceps brachii is prime mover, while brachioradialis and brachialis, they act as synergist. In this diagram, they show the fixator, that the muscle, these muscles, they fixes the scapula, and when they fix the scapula, the deltoid muscles can contract and abducts the humerus till 90-degree angle. So I hope you can you understood the prime movers, agonist and antagonist, synergist and fixator. So I think this is enough for today's. We will continue our next lecture, the further classification in the next lecture. Thank you.